The majority of time when we're thinking about college, I think it's safe to say a lot of us mostly think about how am I going to pay for college, what's the application process, college essays, all of that type of stuff. And something that sometimes can get overlooked is the whole idea of how am I going to prepare my kids socially and emotionally to completely uproot from everything they know and start another life. So that's what I'm going to be covering today. So I'm going to start with just laying a little bit of groundwork and some of the changes that are happening in the brain with teenagers that actually help to support them in this launch. And then we'll talk about specific skills that we can help them develop throughout their middle and high school careers to be ready for this, and then obviously what we as the adults in our lives can do to help with all those things. So, the teenage brain. Anyone have any idea what the teenage brain may have in common with other animals?
It's a good day.
That's a good day, right? Hormones, yeah. So there's a couple of changes in the brain that start occurring in adolescence that I want to talk about. And very interestingly, scientists have found that these changes happen across species. And you can see that not even just with mammals, with a lot of different species. One is that we see increased risk-taking, right? And the other one is that we see our teenagers moving away from the family group and spending more time with their social group. And so scientists have found that as all of these different animals are preparing to leave their nest, they're exhibiting similar behaviors. And so this lower risk threshold and the pleasure in risk-taking are actually serving a purpose across species to help animals prepare to leave the nest, is kind of the theory. So I thought this quote kind of summed it up well. The only thing more dangerous than taking risk in adolescence is not taking them. So their brains' reward circuits are becoming increasingly active, and so this is really emphasizing the pros of risk-taking and majorly de-emphasizing the cons for them. And we know that moving away from the home is filled with risks. So their brains need to start to be wired for them to want to take risks because they're going to have to. So the question then becomes, how can we support healthy risk-taking as they're preparing for this? We can't totally say, no, you can't do this, no, you can't do that. We can't inhibit it, but how can we help them make safe risks? So here's a couple of ideas that I had. Doing things that they can do, and they can also start doing things they can almost do. And we need them to be taking age-appropriate risks, especially while they're still in the home, they're still in the safety net of their high school, their family, and we can be there to catch them. So we have to let them take age-appropriate risks. So some examples of age-appropriate risk would be trying a completely new activity that they've never tried before, hanging out with new people that they've never hung out with before, resolving misunderstandings on their own. We need to, give them the we believe you can solve this on your own. And physical risk, like ropes courses. There's a picture of skydiving on the last slide, and that's sort of a joke and sort of not a joke. Volunteering with a population maybe they've never worked with before, mentoring younger kids, going to a cultural fair somewhere where maybe they're the minority in the room and they're not used to that. So anything that kind of puts them out of their comfort zone in a safe and healthy way can help with increasing positive risk-taking and helping them through that. So then the other change that we see is the drive to connect with peers and less with the family. And so again, scientists are finding that there are brain and DNA reasons for this, because as they leave the home, they need their peers. That's going to be their new support group, because they're not going to be with us, their family, anymore. So even though it seems really personal, I was reading this book that said it's actually their DNA. So it's not personal, even though it seems so personal, that they need to be able to have the support of their peers as they're leaving the home. So what can we do then? We can't just completely cut off from them. So keeping the lines of communication open. I went to a presentation recently, and what stuck with me that the speaker said was he made an analogy of a window. So when the window of opportunity opens to connect with our teen, to be ready. So we might, think they're going to want to connect with us over dinner or while we're driving. But if that's not the time, if they want to connect right when we're in the middle of something, it seems rational to say, can you hold on a second? This isn't really a good time. Can we talk in a little bit? But whenever they open that window, we have to, if we can, kind of drop what we're doing and be ready and connect, because that's when they're ready. So whenever we can, just keep communication with them as they're moving out more with their peers. Any questions on that brain stuff? Just kind of wanted to hit on that because sometimes it just helps to make sense of why they're doing what they're doing, because it can be so frustrating in the moment, but there's actually a reason for it. So just kind of having that background. Okay, so getting down to the nitty-gritty, what do we need our kids to be able to do? One way you can think about this is the errands that you run in a week. So, for most of us, I think that's probably the grocery store, getting gas, paying bills, going to the bank, cooking, cleaning, laundry. So just, think, how many of these things does my teenager do? We know that they can do all these things, but how many are they actually doing? How many of these things have we given them the chance to do on their own? Because the reality is when they get to college, they're going to have to be able to do all of it. So if we can give them exposure to these things while they're still at home, that will help prepare them. So connect rather than correct. This is something that I tell myself all the time. We have, I'm sure all of us have received a lecture at some point from a parent, one of our parents, and we know that it just goes in one ear and out the other. So I read a book that called these rap sessions, giving them a rap session on, hey, you gotta do this, you gotta do that, you gotta do this, you gotta do that. We know that's not effective. So if we can start creating a healthy dialogue with them over time and giving them exposure and chances to try these things, that's going to be the most supportive for them. So these are some of the skills that I think teens really need when they go to college. Time management and organization kind of go together. Critical thinking skills, clear communication, self-advocacy, we already discussed risk-taking. So some ideas on how to give them opportunities to do these things. And these are just some ideas that I came up with to kind of get all of our wheels turning. There are lots of ways to help them strengthen these skills. So allowing our kids to schedule their own appointment. Their hair appointment, their physical in order to participate in the sports season. All of those things, especially as they get into high school, they can do on their own. This one, I thought, you might want to make a copy of it for yourself. But, maybe slowly start to give them ownership over important documents that they're going to need to take with them. Their birth certificate and all of those things. Holding them accountable for deadlines, I think this is really difficult because we love our kids unconditionally and we want to rescue them when they need us. But for example, if they go to school and they had a deadline on a project and they left it at home and they're calling saying, can you please bring it? You forgot it. You need to talk to the teacher and figure it out. That was your deadline. So those are the things for us that are like, I could just totally easily run it over there to you. But especially as they're getting older, sophomore, junior year, they need to start becoming more accountable for that. Helping them open a bank account and manage it. And another thing I would say is that it's important to be open with them ahead of time about how much you as a family are going to contribute to their bank account and how much you expect that they're going to earn on their own, so that they know that ahead of time and it's clear, can create, eliminate conflict down the road. So there are, I'm sure, lots of other ways to help them start to get this time management and organization down. But those are some suggestions. Critical thinking. So we know that just inhibiting impulses doesn't work. Saying, no, you can't do this, no, you can't do that, no, you can't do this, no, you can't do that. So we, as they're going through these critical thinking skills, to help them really reflect on what their values and instincts were, instead of just saying, don't do this, do that. But to help them make choices. So a couple of examples that might come up for them, especially in high school. Our kids are really busy, and so there's going to be a time at some point when they're double booked. So instead of telling them, why don't you, this seems like the more important thing to do, you should do this. Let them decide what's more important to me, which one is going to be more difficult to miss versus make up, those kinds of things. And then food choice was another one. I thought of, when they get to college, they're going to have to decide what they eat, when they eat. So if we can start giving them some ownership over those decisions, am I going to go to the salad bar or the fast food restaurant? And maybe even with groceries, maybe they start to buy their own groceries, again, as they get older to be juniors and seniors. Okay. Clear communication. This is something I really wish our kids would get more education on this. So when I talk to kids about this, I say aggressive. Does everyone know what that is? Oh, yeah. Mm. Passive. Does everyone know what that is? Yeah. Passive aggressive. Does everyone know what that is? Yes. Assertive. No, I don't know what that is. So, and I think, largely this is because it's not modeled for them in the media. I mean, any Real Housewives show that you watch, I've never seen anyone be assertive on that show. So, think about, you're a kid suddenly in a tiny dorm room, sleeping 3 feet away from a complete stranger. They have to be able to have clear communication skills and know how to be assertive. So for example, if their roommate suddenly, the roommate's boyfriend has been sleeping there for 3 days. So we can yell at them. That's not going to probably get the outcome we wanted. We can pretend nothing's wrong, even though something is wrong. We could have a post-it note war, or tweet something, or subtweet something. Or we can say, I feel really disrespected because you brought your boyfriend here and we hadn't talked about that ahead of time. And in the future, I really hope we can talk about this before you make a decision. They don't know how to do that unless we teach them. So for this one, I would say, one of the best things that we can do is really model it for them as they're in high school. To give them the language and the exposure, they can see our body language, they can see us making eye contact, because again, that's not being modeled for them anywhere else. So if we can model it for them in our families, that I think would really help. Other thing I would say, especially if anyone has older kids who are really close to launching, juniors or seniors, is to establish ahead of time what your communication plan is going to be as a family. So how often and when do you plan on communicating once they're in college? And again, that can help to just eliminate a lot of hurt feelings. We might be thinking, oh, we're going to talk on the phone every day, and maybe our teen is thinking, like, I'll see you at Thanksgiving. So if we can kind of have the plan that works for both of us, then that, again, just helps. So self-advocacy, we can't always bail them out, again, and that's a discomfort that we have to sit with, because once they get to college and they're in a huge lecture hall with a professor, they have to be able to know how to advocate for themselves. So one thing I would really encourage for them to practice that is putting the responsibility on them to communicate with their teachers and coaches when they're having an issue. So, for example, with a coach, instead of, as a parent calling the coach to ask a question, which is a perfectly fine thing to do, there's nothing wrong with that, but we can encourage our kids to say, hey coach, I'm not getting as much playing time as I hoped. Can you tell me what type of skills I can work on to get more playing time? That's a conversation that they can have. They're ready for that. Same thing with teachers. I didn't get a grade that I was hoping for. Can you tell me what I can do better? Can I earn back any of these points? What can I do better next time? That kind of thing. And even down to like, I have 2 tests on the same day and I want to move something, or I have 2 projects due at the same time, they can talk to their teachers, and that will really help them for college. Avoiding overparenting, so that kind of goes through all of these things, but I think what I really wanted to get across was confusing our needs with their needs. So we love our kids so much, we never want to see them suffer or fail. So sometimes our need is to fix their problem. And we can see so clearly, like, oh my gosh, this is exactly what you need to do. I can help you, let's do it. But oftentimes, especially as they're getting older, what they need is to fix their own problem. And so for us, that's kind of sitting back and dealing with that discomfort. And we can coach them through it if they want our feedback to say, this is maybe how you might phrase it, this is maybe how you might go about it. But we have to let them kind of start to take ownership over fixing their own problems and finding their own solutions. So one suggestion I would have is just the 24-hour rule. You know, if something's really upsetting, give it some time, see how your teen is kind of dealing with it, what their plan is, and give them some time to work through it before you come in and give your suggestion.